I am an H-60 pilot, but what you may not know about me is I am also an undercover change agent. So what do I mean by being an undercover change agent? A lot of times I get the question, how did you do it? How did you change things for women in the military and women's equality? And how did you open up, 238,000 jobs to women? And my answer is always, I didn't. I was a big contributor, or a contributor, but it wasn't me. It was hundreds of women, lawyers, PR, women veterans, male veterans. And the fight has been going on for a very long time. The ground combat exclusion policy has been in place for just over 10 years. So it's a fight that's been being fought since before I was even a pilot. So I just want to make that clear. But how do you become a contributor to a change effort like that? The answer is the summary of the quote by Gandhi that most people are familiar with, that you have to be the change you want to see in the world. I didn't realize it at the time, but throughout my career, I was acting as the example for changing this policy. At the time, what I was doing was proving a certain group of people wrong who had been telling me my whole life that I couldn't do this, one at a time. But what I didn't realize until this point in my career was that throughout my career, I had been acting in a way that could later be used as an example. And it really drove home the point to me that if you are what you want to see in the world, that's the big first step. So without all the groundwork that had been laid by myself and others, this change never would have come across, because it wasn't that the lawsuit went to the Supreme Court and it was ruled in our favor. The lawsuit was going on for 3 months, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, based on recommendations from their commanders, they recommended to the Secretary of Defense to lift it, and he did. So I doubt any of those Joint Chiefs said, MJ said we should do this. So how did I go through my career as an example for this? To be able to explain this a little bit and illustrate how you can be an undercover change agent, I have to tell you a little bit about my background, in addition to what Steve has already eloquently introduced me as. So a lot of the objections to allowing, and it's so hard for me always to say allowing women to go into combat, right? Because women have been in combat for hundreds of years, and women have been in Iraq and Afghanistan since the beginning of the war. Women have received Purple Hearts, women have been killed. I've Medevac'd lots of women off the battlefield. So it's always an interesting topic for me to start talking about allowing women to go into combat. The point of the case was to let the women who are doing the same job as the man to her shoulder have the same job title, so that when it comes time for promotion and her package comes up against another person's package and they did the same job, that she would have an equal opportunity to compete for command positions and such, because there's a lot of things, especially in the Marines and the Army, that you can't do unless you have credit for that combat experience. So a lot of the arguments against this change are women can't hack it physically, women can't hack it emotionally or psychologically, men aren't going to respond well, they're going to act overly chivalrous. And then, believe it or not, one of the top arguments now, and I like to think because we've successfully combated all the other ones, is the bathroom situation, right? I loved it. I got asked this question live on MSNBC about an op-ed that was in, I believe it was the New York Times, about men and women having to poop next to each other. And I said, I love that this is where the opposition has gone, because it really means that we've, tackled everything else. But I can tell you that in my role as a H-60 pilot, I've done a lot of things other than just deployed to Afghanistan. I've done wildfire suppression, where we dump buckets of water on wildfires. I've done hurricane response, where we're plucking people off of roofs. And one of the things that I've done is long-range over-water search and rescue. So when the Coast Guard can't go out because it's 600 miles, for example, and our aircraft has an aerial refueling capability, we'll air refuel 2 times on the way out there, pick someone off of a boat, air refuel 2 times on the way back, often under night vision goggles. And guess what? In a 10.5-hour mission, let's just say this is something I've already addressed successfully, and it's not as big of an issue as people like to make it out to be. The other example on this topic, before I leave it, because it's my favorite, is yes, it's embarrassing for men and women who don't know each other and are strangers to go to the bathroom in the same place, right? That's why we have men and women's restroom. Where do you not have a men and women's restroom? In your home. So the answer is not keep men and women apart. The answer is train them together. Let them be brothers and sisters in arms. Let them be comfortable with each other. And that's how you answer that question. When you train them separately and then throw them together, yes, anything's going to be awkward, to include trading fire with the enemy and not knowing if that person to your left or right is going to be able to hold their own. So when I tell you my story, you'll hear how the benefit of my crew having trained with me and my having proven myself with them already just in training just completely nullified all of the arguments that a lot of people have.